All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful morning here in Houston, Texas, 9 a.m. Welcome to my channel, Dr. Nurse Paul. And it's New Year. Lots of things that I want to launch this year. First, being this webinar mini series. I call it Starting Your Journey to USA. I remember when I started my channel back in 2022, I launched um, a similar podcast or webinar series. I called it the USA Nurse Series. But it's been 3 years, and there's a lot of new nurses that are following me and are asking me of how they can get their internationally educated nurses journey started. Going to the US particularly because I'm based here in the United States. So I'm like, why not start a new webinar? And today I'm so excited because I have not gone live stream for a bit. I was really busy the last half of the year of 2025 professionally speaking. Lots of professional organizations that I volunteered in, and also lots of things that I was doing on the side as far as professional wise. But today this year, my goal is to connect more to my viewers and followers, especially my internationally educated nurses, to offer valuable resources for you. That includes this webinar series and podcasts that we will launch this year again. And today I'm happy to have one of my friends who will be my co-speaker and guest for today. We'll bring her into the stage in a bit, but while we're waiting for more viewers, all right. And I'm having a little technical issue this morning because I haven't done live stream. Can you guys use the comment section to where you're watching right now and tell me your name or where you're coming from so we know where you guys are watching from? All right. And I'll spend a few minutes to introduce myself. My name is Paul. I'm gonna look at the camera here. I'm a little distracted. My name is Paul, or in social media, I use the moniker DNP or Doctor Nurse Paul. Basically, I've run this channel or social media pages for the last 3 years, sharing my journey as an internationally educated nurse. I'm a Filipino nurse who moved to the US and have migrated here for career opportunities and for personal reasons as well. But I want to use my time to share more of this journey and how I can be a good resource for IENs. Basically, I know that the struggles, the challenges to move to another country is really great, right? So I remember within 3 months of moving to the US, I want to go back to the Philippines. But that's exactly why I'm creating all these podcasts and webinar series to help you guys navigate those challenges. At least that's one thing off of your checklists of things to do, right? I have one of my followers here, Ellen. Thank you. She is watching from Illinois. Hi, Ellen. Please share this to your page so your friends can join us as well. Okay. Anyway, we're running a little behind here because I was having a little live stream issues. It's the first time I'm live streaming in my Instagram as well. So this is like my experiment for that as well. Um, but I want to introduce my good friend, and I'm going to bring her to the stage right now. Her name is Susan, or Dr. Susan Sanders, and she is the chief nurse of international evaluations,
Education.
international education evaluation. And we've met a few months back. Susan is an expert in credentialing process. She's done this for so many years. And what better way to start the year but to talk about the very intricate, complex process of credentialing for IENs, particularly Susan. Like even now, I would apply for academic or like professional positions. I would still need credentialing. So today we're gonna enlighten our viewers, our immigrant nurses who wants to go here to the US about the credentialing process.
Yes, great, Paul. Good to see you again, and I'm
Good.
really excited to be here.
Yes, we've been planning this for so many months,
Yes.
Suzanne. But last few months was really extremely busy for me. But thank you very much for your time, Suzanne. Before we proceed, we have some viewers here. We have Arian joining us today, and also Michelle joining us from North Carolina. Marvin is one of my good friends, also an administrator of Livfora, which is the biggest community for immigrant nurses here in Facebook. Uh, and he is in the Philippines right now. Hi, Marvin. He's based in California here in the States. But Suzanne, we're live streaming this in my channels in Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And I've also shared this stream in LinkedIn. Unfortunately, we cannot see the comments from LinkedIn. So please join us from YouTube or Facebook. And before we proceed, Suzanne, I want to give you time to introduce yourself and what you do in IEE.
Sure. Well, thanks again, and looking forward to seeing some of the Philippine nurses when I visit there for the first time next week. I'll be there for the PNAA conference. So we'll have an exhibit. So stop by and see me. I'd love to meet you. I work with IEE, International Education Evaluations, and our mission is to improve lives and empower dreams for international students, workers, and nurses. So what we do is evaluate credentials for nurses, and we're going to talk about how we do that. I have many, many years background in nursing. I have over 40 years. We won't say how many over 40, but I have a lot of experience. I've been a nurse educator. I've been the director of a nursing program. I've been a chief nurse a couple of times. I've done NCLEX review. I used to be vice president of Kaplan for review courses. And so I'm an expert in item writing. And now I'm an expert in credentialing because I've worked in credentialing and worked with international nurses for a long time. So I'm based in Tennessee, and you see, I have a sweater on. Paul, you don't have a sweater on. It's cold here. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit more about credentialing.
Thank you, Susan. Lots of rich nursing experience, and you are exactly the right person to talk about credentialing today. You know what, Suzanne? We now have about 50 live viewers, and that's a good start for me for this year.
Great.
And we could not see the comments from Instagram, but one of my friends and my former students, JP, is joining us from Cambridge, UK, and is wanting to migrate here in the US as well. So I'll monitor that page to see if we get comments as well, right? And Suzanne, you mentioned about your credentialing experience, all this rich experience in nursing. One thing that stood out for me is being also an NCLEX contributor. You know, NCLEX is a big thing for immigrant nurses, not only credentials, because obviously if we cannot pass the licensure exam, we cannot practice here as well. Tell us briefly about that experience and how that influenced you to go to the credentialing process, and how is that instrumental to your work with immigrant nurses?
Yes, well, first off, I applied to be an NCLEX item writer many years ago. And that was probably the hardest job I ever had, to write questions they put us in a room. We wrote questions for 5 days. It was really, really intense. So I have always been interested. I'm kind of a numbers nurse. I love numbers and statistics. So I was always interested in NCLEX outcomes and item analysis and all of those things. So in 2010, I became the vice president at Kaplan Nursing, and Kaplan provided the NCLEX review courses as well as worked with universities on testing of nurses. So that became really a passion then for me, to help faculty prepare students and also to help nurses pass the NCLEX. And we focused not on just US-based nurses. We had a program for immigrant nurses as well. So any international nurse that wanted to take the NCLEX, we had a review for that. So my interest in international nurses grew, and I went actually and worked at CGF&S for a couple of years. And then IEE wanted to start their program. So I have developed their program for credentialing and the healthcare worker certificate. There are only 3 companies in the US that can do the healthcare worker certificate, and we are the latest. So I'm really proud of that. We got our approval without any recommendations. It's like doing a self-study or preparing for joint commission, and so we're really happy that we have that. So that's how I got started and interested in international nurses.
All right. Well, that's really a good, professional track for you and how you're working now with immigrant nurses. It's funny because one of my dreams coming here to the U.S. is to actually write for NCLEX. However, whenever I look at the criteria, I could not qualify because I'm still teaching NCLEX. I haven't stopped teaching NCLEX since
Mhm.
2010. So that would be conflict of interest in a sense. And I don't want to give that up because I love teaching NCLEX. However, as an NP, I was able to become a contributor as well. So this year's exam, we wrote it. I'd probably say I wrote a few of those, and we analyzed some of the old questions and put it back into circulation. In fact, I'm using my ANPCB content contributor item analyzer for that. But we have a lot of viewers. I want to take this time to give a few minutes for viewers to interact with us. We have Jorley joining us right now from the Philippines. And we also have Vetcher joining us from Florida. Thank you for joining. We have a lot of viewers today, Suzanne, but I want the viewers to, since this is a live stream, I want you guys to interact with us through comment section as we talk about credentialing. And I have a banner at the bottom that says, our topic today is about credentialing process for IENs, but I'm also running a raffle, Suzanne. Everything is in my page. You go to drnursepaul.com for viewers, for live viewers today. You can put in your raffle entry. And at the end of the day, today I will announce the winner through my social media pages. But all the mechanics are in my page, drnursepaul.com. Now we're going to go to the meat of the conversation, Suzanne, or Dr. Sanders, or how do you want me to address you?
Susan, we're colleagues.
Susan.
Totally
All
fine.
right. Yeah, because here in the States, it's first name basis. In the Philippines, Suzanne, our culture dictates us to use respect or courtesy before we pronounce or say the name. So we use sir or ma'am, and calling someone by their first name unless they're your friends is a little offending. So I have to, like, when I moved here to the States, that's one of the cultural shifts that I had to do as well. But if I'm not sure, I ask them how they prefer to be called, out of respect as well. But thank you for clarifying that. We have viewers from YouTube as well. Madeline is joining us from the Philippines. And now let's talk about credentialing. What is credentialing, Suzanne? And who requires it?
Well, credentialing is really an overview of your experience, education, whatever is required. Now, in the US, the boards of nursing require credentialing. Academic institutions, if you want to go back to school, require credentialing. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is USCIS, you'll hear us talk about that, require credentialing. And when we look at those credentials, we must look at comparability. I'm talking about nursing credentials. If you are applying for a board of nursing to become licensed in the U.S., they are looking at comparability of your education, license, and language to a U.S. educated nurse. The mission of the boards of nursing is to protect the public. So they are responsible for being sure that whoever they license is comparable and meets the standards. And so that's why credentialing is so very important.
All right, Suzanne. So you've talked about comparability. That means that because we're not educated in the US and we want to practice in the US, does that mean that an evaluation company, for example, which before, back in my time, Suzanne, I took my NCLEX 2007. Before, it used to be the boards that do that. I think that's a lot of work for them to do now, except California in New York, that they
Yeah.
have to outsource it, right? So does that mean an evaluations company that is commissioned by the board or authorized by the board needs to review these records to make sure that our education matches the US education for nurses, so we're allowed to take the exam?
That is correct. And it's difficult for nurses and even evaluation companies to some extent, because every board of nursing has their own regulations. So they establish, and the board at each board is made up of volunteers. They're not paid. Now the board has a staff who is paid and runs the board, and but the actual board members are appointed, and usually they're appointed by the governor of the state. So they work together. They're usually either in practice or in education. They're RNs, LPNs, and consumers. That's what comprises the boards. And they establish then the criteria for the license. When you submit your application for licensure in a state, the evaluation has to come from a company like IEE, and we submit it directly to the board, and then they determine whether you are comparable. IEE does not determine that. We know what you need, but the board can, make that decision. And when you are determined comparable, they will offer you an authorization to test. And that authorization to test allows you to apply and take the NCLEX, which is the nursing licensure exam. And there's an RN one and there's an LPN one.
Right. That's a very good, solid explanation of what credentialing is about. But also that brings me to the topic, Suzanne. I've taught nurses from over 40 countries in my NCLEX company, Aspire RN. And one thing that was notable, and all educators and nursing organizations know this, is that nursing education differs from country to country. Like, for example, Suzanne, back in 2014, I was invited to speak in Indonesia to see if we can implement NCLEX and make Indonesian nurses more globally like could qualify in the West, particularly US being one of the biggest recruiters, right? But one of the things that stood out to me during that conference, I spoke to like 200 deans all over the islands of Indonesia, was that the curriculum is vastly different from university to university. And that's only the Indonesian part, right? So we're talking about I had students from Nepal, I had students from Guyana, I have students from certain parts of Africa like Kenya and Nigeria. All of them have varying educations as well. Does that mean that certain educational backgrounds may not even qualify or be credentialed to practice in the US, right?
Right. It does. And from all the universities in Tennessee have different curricula. I mean, it goes down to the minute level. So there's not always a common or a core curriculum, but what the evaluation does is we look at the transcripts, and these have to be official transcripts from the school. We have to guard against fraud. Remember, I said the boards protect the public, so they're going to be very cautious about what documents they accept. So we accept the official transcripts from the school, and we also require records for nursing. In the U.S., most boards require that there is education, theory and clinical, in medical, surgical, pediatric, maternal child, and mental health. Not all of them require community or gerontology, because they do still have associate degree and diploma degree that don't teach those courses. So what is required from the university is to show us the education that you've had and what clinical component goes with that. Now, the number of hours is important in some places. Hawaii requires a certain percentage of clinical to the total number of hours. So it's very important that we as an evaluation company look at all of the documents, and we send then a report to the board that says this is comparable or not comparable. So we'll list the courses, but we'll also make an opinion. And like I said before, it's the board's obligation to either select that or not select that and authorize you to test. We don't have influence over that at all. Once that once that comparability has been established, that then means that the board will authorize you to test. We can't evaluate. So Paul, if you and I went to the same school and graduated, we can't evaluate the curriculum and say everybody that from that school is comparable. We have to look at every individual because the curriculum may have changed from the time you went and the time I went. So there's a lot of specifics and requirements. North Carolina has just recently implemented a requirement that the nurse has taken care of multiple patients. Because in nursing school, especially in the US, when you go to clinical, you get one patient or two patients. And they want to be sure that nurses are able to carry, more patients. Because when you get out in the real world, right, Paul, you take care of more than one or two patients with your assignment. So that's how we look at credentials. The other important part of that is that the school that you graduate from is a regionally accredited school. It has to have authorization, whether that's from the Ministry of Health or from some educational program. They have to be regionally accredited.
Right. So now we know that. Thank you for explaining that, Suzanne. Sounds really complicated, and that's exactly why we have to talk about it. Now we know that credentialing of our education as immigrant nurses are very important in two parts mainly. That's number one for the NCLEX processing, and secondly for visa processing, right? So credentials are important for those two parts if they want to be working here in the US. And even though I've been a nurse here for 9 years, I've been a nurse for 19 years, I had to go through all of those as well. So to this date, it's still a relevant theme, right? To talk about credentialings for immigrant nurses. But we know that American nurses don't have to go through evaluation. What's the difference on the regulatory or policy side?
Well, American nurses really do go through evaluation. It's just a different method. So, as a director of a nursing program, I had to sign off on all of the nurses in my program that they met the criteria for graduation. And then the Board of Nursing had actually set the rules of what the education had to consist of. So they know, though, that if I'm approved by the Board of Nursing in Tennessee and I submit a nurse for authorization to test, then I, as the dean, have signed it, and I am saying that this nurse meets the qualifications.
Right. So it's just a different process.
Right.
It just sounds complicated for internationally educated nurses, but that's because our curriculum widely differs, right? For example, I always tell this to my student that your curriculum to where you're educated in whatever country or jurisdiction is patterned to the healthcare needs of that country. So it may not be, they're not going to pattern it to US because they're not training you to practice to the US. But that's exactly why credential evaluation is important, because we need to know if they match that requirement before they could practice here. Because, of course, like you said, the board's main function is to ensure safe practice, and that includes to be able to practice safely. Are the nurses educated correctly? Does that make sense for everyone? And that's exactly why we're doing credentialing. And we've touched this already earlier, Suzanne, but why is it a lot of our viewers, remember, are not from the States, so they may not be familiar, but why is it different from state to state? Like, for example, I have licenses in maybe expired now, don't quote me on this. We'll check later, but Hawaii and California, and I have to apply on each of those, right? Good thing I have like the compact license, so I don't have to apply to a few. But if I want to work in New York, I have to apply on that as well because it's not compact. But why is it varying from state to state?
Well, because it's the same as why does the curricula vary? Everyone is different and everyone has an opinion as to what constitutes a comparable education. And the Board of Nursing can establish that in each of the states or each of the boards. You know, it's not just states because Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, others, you know, there are other boards of nursing, but it just varies because that is what that board, and they are independent boards. And so that gives them the opportunity to establish what is their criteria. And you know, the other part of credentialing, Paul, if you're ready, we can talk about that, because internationally educated nurses don't just need academic evaluation, they have to have language evaluation. So there has to be a comparability of English language, spoken and written, because that's part of the safety that the board is protecting, so that when you come to the US, you're able to communicate with your patients, with your doctors, with your colleagues, whoever. So each state also has requirements on their English language proficiency. Some states don't test that. Some states have specific requirements, and the government, USCIS, has a specific chart that tells you what you must have in order to obtain a visa. So there is that component. Now, there are some exceptions. If you were educated in the UK, if you were educated in Canada, and you're international nurse, then there's no requirement for language. And then there's also the license. So when you're looking at credentials for nurses that want to come to the US, in order to get take the NCLEX and get a license, you must have your academics evaluated, you must have your license in your home country evaluated, and you must have your language evaluated if the state requires that where you're going. And when I talk about license, I mean that you are either licensed in your home country or not licensed, or the home country doesn't have a license, and that you are in good standing. That's the main thing. If you are licensed in the Philippines and you've had disciplinary action, the board wants to know that. So most of the time, you know, I have to see a license that's been sanctioned.
Yeah.
So those are the components for credential. And by credentials, I'm talking about nursing license through a board of nursing.
Yep. And we're only talking about the board of nursing. Susan, as they go further into their immigration journey, another stop is the immigration services, the USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, which have their own set of requirements, similar, right? And that is basically your education, your licensure, and English exam. This is where the health worker certification comes in. It is mandated by federal law that every immigrant, particularly nurses, healthcare workers, and physical therapists, must have this certificate. Tell us more about this and what makes it. Why do we need that?
Sure. Well, the healthcare worker certificate, and that's the one that there's only 3 companies that can provide that. It does evaluate academics, license, and language, and you have to have passed the NCLEX. So it's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And I don't know if that's a colloquialism that everybody will understand, but you've got to have your board of nursing credentials done so that you can take NCLEX. Once you've passed NCLEX, then you can move forward with your healthcare worker certificate. And that again is for instance, if IEE does your credential evaluation for the board, then you don't have to have that credential evaluation again. We know that your education's comparable, and we will take that and we will add then your license that we've already checked too. We just need to be sure it's current. We've already checked your language, and now we check off that you've passed the NCLEX. And the USCIS requires that as a piece for your interview at the embassy before you can get your visa. So you have to have this wonderful certificate from IEE with your picture on it, and it's good for 5 years. And you take that to your embassy interview or for any of your visa application.
All right. So the first one is board required credentialing, and a lot of boards do require that. And then you pass your NCLEX, right? After taking the NCLEX, you now apply for the health certificate, health worker certificate, which is federally mandated for healthcare immigrants. Um, and that's basically including NCLEX in the credentialing process as well. So very complicated matter. That's why we're talking about it. But in your experience, Suzanne, what are the common delays for these credentialing processes? I think they need to know that so they can mitigate that before it even happens, especially for those that have not started credentialing just yet.
Sure. Well, the delays predominantly come from the university responding to the official transcript. Luckily, we're in a digital world now. You know, certainly I didn't grow up in a digital world, but we have a digital world now, and we accept electronic and digital reports and official transcripts. Excuse me. So if at all possible, have your university send the paperwork via an email, which is we actually verify it and make sure it's it's appropriate, but have them send the documents to us electronically. Otherwise, it takes such a long time for the mail. And you have to think of two things here. The university usually isn't getting anything from sending this transcript for you. You've already paid all your money, gotten your degree, and they might charge you a fee, but in a lot of cases they don't. So it's not high on their priority to send that document for you. So if you have a relationship with the admissions office at your university, you can probably help prompt that. Many of and the other thing that I was going to say is many countries now are slow to process because they don't want you to leave. And
Yeah.
that makes it difficult for you. Many countries also for licensure have online verification. Like in the US, we have nurses. And in many countries, we can verify your license online too. So if you have to have your transcript mailed, if you have to have your license verification mailed, those are the things that would hold us up. At IEE, if we get your documents and we verify them, you will get your report for credentialing in 5 days. It's all about getting them here and getting them verified.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Suzanne. And I want to invite the viewers to leave questions in the comment section. We're going to answer that later. I'm seeing questions already. And the more questions that you guys want to put, the more that we can answer. So please take your time to do that. I also have raffle ongoing right now in my page for this live stream. So please see the banner at the bottom of the screen. Go to my webpage, drnursepaul.com, and put in your raffle entry for that so you can win my NCLEX course. And as we continue about the conversation, Suzanne, how could an immigrant nurse get started with credentialing? You said about, is this a chicken or egg scenario? What comes in first? Like, which is really which, right? And it's a very intricate, confusing process. You've mentioned about so many stops that could slow down the process, right? I remember back in '07, Susan, everything is mailed. When I applied to the New Mexico board, as soon as I got my license in the Philippines, I took my board exam after graduating in June '07. You know, it's the Philippines. We don't get the results right away. We got it 3 months later, right? I love the boards of nursing, but there's also a lot of work that we can do to expedite that process, and they're pretty good right now. We only take the board twice a year, by the way, Suzanne. So we all sit in this big halls with thousands of students being proctored. But anyway, so I had to submit everything to the New Mexico board, didn't receive response till 6 months later, and then processed my ATT and all that. So it took me roughly 8 months from the start of processing until taking the NCLEX. And before, the credentialing process was easier. But, Susan, I remember back in 2011, I was already teaching NCLEX. And this is sad because you went around in the Filipino community that there were Filipinos who submitted, um, was that fraudulent documents, academic records to the California board. And that probably started the domino effect for these boards to look at authenticity of these documents.
Mm.
And now it's being outsourced to companies like IEE. But how do we get started? If I'm a new nurse, I just got off nursing school and I got educated, say, for example, in Africa or Europe or Asia, what's my first step?
Well, your first step is to determine perhaps which state or where you want to work. And IEE is credentialed or approved by 20 state board or 20 boards in MI, Northern Mariana Islands, and then 19 states. So if you want to come to work in Illinois, so for instance, you're ready to do that, you can go on the IEE website, and it's myiee.org, myiee.org, and fill out an application, and you select Illinois, and that will then prompt us to evaluate your credentials based on Illinois requirements. So you'll fill out the application. It'll tell you must have an official transcript sent by your school. Here's the form that the school must fill out. You send that to them. You sign a release to let us check your license. You tell us if you've taken your English test, and we check that with the English company. So it's really easy to get started, and our price for that credential evaluation is $395. I know that's what you're going to ask. It's $395 US, and that's the most economical. We're the most economical and the fastest credentialing company. So I invite you to apply. We have 24/7, 24 hours, 7 day a week customer service as well, live customer service. They can chat with you, or they can take your phone calls, and they will be able to help you if you have any other questions. And also on that website, under the nursing credentialing, there's a handbook. You can look at that. And under the what we call Global Bridge, which is our visa certificate, there's a handbook. So you can have a look at that.
Yep. If you can share that to me, Suzanne, I can also send it to my email list. We'll talk about that later. And I probably could send them the link or at least the handbook as well if it's a downloadable form.
Yes.
But Suzanne, we're now going to pivot to your work with IEE. Tell us about IEE, because there are only few credentialing companies that there are also not only credentialing for the boards, but are also credentialing for immigration services. So tell us about IEE.
Well, IEE started over 40 years ago as a credentialing agency, and they would evaluate for students coming to the U.S., an engineering student that wanted to come and get a master's degree. They would evaluate their credentials for that. Teacher evaluations. So we're looking at either teacher's license or continuing education. And then they started with nursing and North Carolina nursing first, because they're based in North Carolina. And so for over 25 years, IEE has been working with North Carolina Board of Nursing. We have the site in North Carolina. We have a satellite office in Mexico and the Philippines, in Lucena. I'll be going to Lucena when I visit so that I can see our office there. So that's, it's a really big operation, but it's owned by a family. And so we're very focused on our customers.
Right. And we have questions about IEE, and we're going to answer that in a bit, Milma. Milmani, and we also encourage everyone to put your questions while Susan is here. She is a very good resource about credentialing, everything that you need clarified. Susan, what are the services that IEE offers?
The services for nurses certainly is the credentialing and the licensing for the boards of nursing. We also offer for nurses the education credentialing. So if you're coming to the U.S. for a master's or a PhD, we can do your education credentials as well. And then we also are able to just offer an education evaluation. And then we're not doing any other allied health at this time, but we also have the other arm of IEE, which is the largest arm. I'm just a small part of it. Is the credentialing for other professionals or for other programs.
Right. And so that's very important for nurses to know. I'll be honest with you. If there was an IEE back then, I would have probably done that because of not only is it economical, but for migration processes, Suzanne, time is of essence. Because that 1 month that you could have saved or a few months, that may be your time to go to the US already. But if you wait too long, the visa process change all the time. It might retrogress again to where you have to wait for a long time. So time is of essence because the visa numbers are limited. And also it's missed opportunities. Really, time is something that you really can't earn back, right? Um, and so those are the different services of IEE. There is a question here by Milmani. How many boards accept IEE evaluations for licensure?
We are currently at 20. I joined IEE in May of 23, and we had one board, and now we have 20. So we're continuing to work and obtain approval from other boards as well. But right now, and these are listed on our website as well, so that you can have a look at that.
That's very important to know because a lot of our IENs, they would select the board based on which services they wanna purchase. For example, IEE. So that's very important to know. Go to myIEE.org and you can check what types of boards or which boards accept the evaluation. And you've also mentioned, Suzanne, that we're not only talking about board evaluations or immigration service evaluation for health worker certificate, but also for advancement of profession, right? For example, you're going to go to advanced degrees or like graduate degrees. I did that, but there was no IEE back then, I think, for nursing. So I did have it in another company. It still took a while. And, there's deadlines usually. I think I'm losing my my camera, so I apologize for that. But we're gonna continue ahead. But what's the advantage of purchasing or using the services of IE? I know you've touched some of them earlier, but let's talk about that again.
Yes. Well, for the licensing, the credentials for the board, the advantage is that once we've verified all of your documents and we're ready to submit the report in 5 days. So if we get all of the documents in today, then we'll submit the report by Friday. It's a multi-step process. We get the documents, we verify the documents, and then we evaluate them and write a report. And then a member of the nursing we have senior evaluators, and that's who's going to write the report, and they're specialists in nursing. And then we're going to have a nurse review your report before it goes to the Board of Nursing. So that is 395 5-day turnaround. The healthcare worker certificate for the visa is a 10-day turnaround and $695. And again, that's the fastest and the best, most economical for you. So same thing. We're really we're really just verifying too. If you had a credential evaluation already, then we just have to verify that, and then your license, your language, and your NCLEX. We have a really good relationship with the National Council of State Boards of Nursing. We ask them to verify an NCLEX. They turn right around, and we have it within a couple of days. So it's a quick process. If you have a credential evaluation by another company and you want IEE to do your Global Bridge Visa Healthcare Worker Certificate, then we just need the report direct from that other company. So if you're also using a recruiter, then that recruiter can send us that report, and that will save you a good bit of time.
All right. So now we're the IEE can actually target um nurses on different stages of their migration journey to the US. First being the nurses applying for NCLEX. So IEE could help you with evaluation of your academic information to submit to the boards of nursing so you can take your NCLEX. IEE could also help issue your health worker certificate, which is required by US Citizenship and Immigration Services for all healthcare worker migrants, particularly nurses going through EB3 or H1B visa. And this is where I'm saying where time is of essence because the visa processing timeline changes all the time. And the third group of nurses that IEE could help are those nurses that want to do graduate degrees or advanced graduate degrees. And like I'm telling you right now, Suzanne, if IEE was there before, I would have availed IEE for all three processes because I have to undergo all those three stages, including going to DNP school. So IEE could also help evaluate your records so they can submit it to your school where you're applying for advanced degrees like doctoral or master's degree. So very important. You can check out myiee.org. Milmani has a follow through question. Is there a discount on your services?
Paul?
Yes. So actually, I have partnered with IEE to offer this to my followers and to my community, not only to my followers, because I do have a big community, the Livfora, which has 242,000 members. I broker with organizations to mainly get these deals not for myself but for the community in general. But if you go to my page drnursepaul.com, you will see there the link, the affiliate link I have with IEE, and I forgot the price, but you can get it much lower than $695, much lower. It is an exclusive deal that I have with IEE. Thank you, IEE, for that. So please visit my website, milmani.drnursepaul.com. And she also has a follow-up question. Is IE evaluation acceptable in Texas, New Mexico, or Montana BON? Any deficiencies or prices to applicants? Those are two
So
questions.
we are approved by Montana Board of Nursing. We're one of three that Montana accepts. Montana does not require language up front. They do
Awesome.
not require a language test up front. So you know, they may require it after an interview, but we don't know that. They will accept our reports. We have our application in for Texas, and it's looking really good for that. And we have our application in for Missouri. We were notified by New Mexico that they did not need any other credential evaluators at this time. However, we will continue to push forward with those.
Yeah. Okay. And probably on the books, as Suzanne tried New York as well, the credential verification services. But I know New York also does internal credentialing. Anyway, I don't
And
know
that's
how.
what they told me. Yeah, that California and New York do internal, so they don't
Yeah,
they
they
don't use
probably have
those.
their own whole floor or department doing that. That's a lot of work for them in it.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Although I did have a California nurse that asked for us to validate, and we
Mhm.
did, and California accepted that. But
Yep.
in general, they do their own.
I've heard of that happening, Suzanne, but that's for I believe from my inference from the data that I received, this is anecdotal, and I don't have the real answer from California board, so please don't quote me. But I've heard this happening for nurses that are already practicing here in the U.S. and they just need evaluation, and California would accept it. But probably it's because they're also seeing that they're already here or working here. So I mean, would the other boards allow nurses that are not credentialed properly to work, right? So that's one thing. But hopefully, California will open doors for evaluation services to accept evaluation from evaluation services company like IEE. Any last words for our viewers, Suzanne? Any tips? Anything you want to tell them about IEE? What are the importance of this turnaround times? And why do we need to talk about credentials in the first place or credentialing process?
Well, the main reason for the credentialing is to ensure comparability of your profession to that of a US nurse. So that's what the boards are ensuring, the safety of the public related to that. It's a step-by-step process. Make a plan, set out to what you've got to do, think about how you're going to get your transcripts. If you've got to do a language test, study for that. If you've got to do the NCLEX, which you do, study for that. And then I think that don't be overwhelmed. I mean, I haven't had to do the process, but I know how overwhelming it is just by seeing colleagues looking at it.
Yeah. And very important, nurses, I want to leave this piece with you that when preparing for migration to the US, and this is what I did back in '07, I looked at the whole process first. We call it bird's eye view or whatever you call that, like the big picture first. In order for me to plan, I need to know the whole process. I'm not only focusing on the NCLEX at the beginning, but I'm also looking at how will I proceed with the English exam? What's going to be my option? Because there's multiple options. Which credentialing company I'd partner or purchase services from, and how are their processes, what's their turnaround time, and everything else. That helps me go to the nitty gritty and then focus on one thing at a time. But in all of those aspects, credentialing process enters because that's very important for immigrant nurses or internationally educated nurses to know that at every stage of our journey, as we migrate and assimilate and enter advanced degree schools, they would require that credentialing. It's just part of the process. I remember talking about this with Dr. Spector of NCSBN during our conference in Siena. Suzanne, you were there as well. I said
Yeah.
there's a lot of stops or obstacles for IENs. And as much as we want to push for policy changes, well, I'm but a little drop in a big ocean. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. But as of now, we need all those credentialing processes to happen, or to we have to undergo all these credentialing processes in order to practice there in the U.S. and even enter advanced degrees. So please keep that in mind that when you consider credentialing evaluation companies, you want to make sure that they're not only providing the services that you need, consider times, consider costs, because these can add greatly. And that is why I partnered with IEE, because they're one of the organizations that it was a pleasure to work with them in the greatest sense. I'm very picky with organizations I partner with. Suzanne, because of my advocacy for nurses and IENs, and I want to make sure that our IENs are actually receiving top tier quality services, but at the same time considering all those things like timeline, respecting their time. I have had nurses that were in my NCLEX course couldn't take the NCLEX because their credential evaluation is still pending. This is talking about 9 months and 1 year waiting. That is not fair for nurses, because time is money. Time is, they could have been, I'm sorry, my camera is messing up. They could have been in the US already practicing at that point, but it is not fair to be waiting for that. And that's just one of the many hurdles, but that greatly adds to the stress of IENs. That's why one of the advocacy that I want is to reduce those red tapes, and that includes improving the timeline significantly And that's where came into picture when I was researching for companies. So thank you for doing that. Please continue the great work that you're doing for nurses. Thank you to our viewers today. We're gonna have a lot more topics that we're gonna talk about in this series. It's gonna be every 2 Mondays. So the next time that I'll come in live is January 26th. And at that time, we're gonna talk about NCLEX application, and some test taking tips. But thank you, Suzanne, for your time today. Thank you for everyone who watched. And again, the raffle is on my webpage, drnursepaul.com. It will be live for another 2 hours, and I will announce the winner tonight. Suzanne, I hope to talk to you soon. And again, you
Thank
can visit my webpage for the affiliate link for IEE. It's under there's a big picture on my webpage that you can click to see the services of IEE as well. Suzanne, thank you for your time.
Thank you all. I really look forward to assisting however we can.
Yes. And hopefully next time we can talk about the nitty gritty of credentialing processes, show them figures or pictures. Let's talk about that, how we can do that again.
Yes, great.
All right. Please contact us. We're both in LinkedIn. If you want to contact us through that, feel free to ask us questions. We'll be here to help you. Thank you, everyone, for following Dr. Nurse Paul, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, it's not ending. I have to do it right now. Sorry. All right. Bye, everyone.